Has an author ever regretted writing a book? The book is about a school shooter and the events that transpire when he holds his school hostage after killing his algebra teacher. If that sounds fucked up, understand that this book was published before Columbine, the deadliest school shooting in the United States history at the time. While there were plenty of school shootings in our nation's history, Rage directly influenced multiple school shooters and pushed them to proceed with their plans. King was quoted as saying, "I suppose if it had been written today, and some high school English teacher had seen it, he would have rushed the manuscript to the guidance counselor and I would have found myself in therapy post-haste." Rage was written in a different time when school shootings and terrorist attacks weren't at the forefront of the world's minds. Stephen King let the book fall out of print when he learned that multiple school shooters were inspired by Rage. He was quoted as stating these reasons for why he let Rage fall out of print. "I did see Rage as a possible accelerant, which is why I pulled it from sale. You don't leave a can of gasoline where a boy with firebug tendencies can lay hands on it. I was protected under the First Amendment, and the law couldn't demand it. I pulled it because in my judgment it might be hurting people, and that made it the responsible thing to do." King saw it as a moral obligation to stop the book from being sold. "It pains me to know that a great author and person like Stephen King must live with the unintended consequences of his work." Like Joker last year, Rage described a person who was mentally unstable and was pushed to violence in response to the world around them. It is unfortunate that young people drew inspiration from Rage to commit unspeakable acts of terror within their respective schools. While King may not see it this way, I believe he could not help that Rage inspired children to shoot up their schools. People are going to find justification to do any unscrupulous and terrible act in whatever they consume, whether it is cheating on their spouse, stealing from others, or killing. American writer Peter Benchley stated that he regretted writing his sensational literature about killer sharks, including his best-selling Jaws. Since he clearly saw that his books encouraged mass killings of sharks, as well as unnecessary culls of these magnificent predators that are not so dangerous as they appear. Indeed, while less than 12 to 80 shark attacks on people are recorded every year, humans kill between 63 million and 273 million sharks, all because of Jaws. And it's the primary reason why Benchley became an outspoken advocate for marine conservation. Before writing his award-winning novel Life of Pi, Canadian author Yann Martel published Self in 1996. But he later regretted writing this book, deeming it to be a failure. He also mentioned in an interview that he felt lonely and in desperate need for direction in his life, something Self did not provide. As such, he explains in his introductory note in Life of Pi, "This book was born as I was hungry. Let me explain. In the spring of 1996, my second book, a novel, came out in Canada. It didn't fare well. Reviewers were puzzled, or damned it with faint praise. Then readers ignored it. Despite my best efforts at playing the clown or the trapeze artist, the media circus made no difference. The book did not move. Books lined the shelves of bookstores like kids standing in a row to play baseball or soccer, and mine was the gangly, unathletic kid that no one wanted on their team. It vanished quickly and quietly. The fiasco did not affect me too much. I had already moved on to another story, a novel set in Portugal in 1939. Only I was feeling restless." Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Unfortunately, the novel sputtered, coughed and died. It's a misery peculiar to would-be writers. Your theme is good, as are your sentences. Really, your story can only be great. But it all adds up to nothing. In spite of the obvious, shining promise of it, there comes a moment when you realize that the whisper that has been pestering you all along from the back of your mind is speaking the flat, awful truth: it won't work. An element is missing, that spark that brings to life a real story, regardless of whether the history or the food is right. Your story is emotionally dead, that's the crux of it. The discovery is something soul-destroying, I tell you. It leaves you with an aching hunger. What now, Tolstoy? What other bright ideas do you have for your life? I asked myself. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. All of this led Martel to write his ultimate success, that is Life of Pi, the greatest adventure novel of all time, the amazing story of survival that involves a young Indian boy and his tiger companion in the Pacific Ocean. British writer and playwright A. A. Milne published his Winnie the Pooh stories in 1926, on behalf of his son Christopher Robin Milne, who owned many stuffed animals that had the same names as the story's characters. However, Milne later expressed his regrets in creating The Famous Bear, because he felt Pooh's adventures overshadowed his other books, including the ones aimed for adults.